It's in Sanskrit. It's said Vajra Chedika Pragna Paramita Sutra. So yeah, we did 2 sessions before where we covered part one. There's different parts. So let's quickly recap the parts, the ones that we finished before in part one. So in chapter one, the the basic, I listed out the highlights of every chapter from previous sessions, so we can quickly go through because it's been like more than, I don't know, almost a month I think since my last presentation. So yeah, in chapter one, it's basically the reason of Dharmic assembly, where they showed us the setting of how the Dharmic setting was in back in the days, and how Buddha will go uh, for lunchtime, or every meal you go to every door and beg for food. So through that passage, through that chapter, we learned that by begging, Buddha teaches the importance of charity and giving, and we learned the way to cultivate with a non-discriminating mind. Also, Buddha considers himself as just as any other cultivator, and goes through all the etiquettes by himself. And in chapter 2, Shubhukti was asking for guidance. Shubhukti, just a reminder, he is the student. He's one of his top student in his Dharmic setting. And in Diamond Sutra, most of the chapters are like Shubhukti asking questions, and Buddha answering, and back and forth. So you'll hear his name a lot in this session. So in chapter 2, it's basically him asking for guidance. The 2 questions that he asked to Buddha was, how do they dwell their body mind? Like, in a sense, how do people dwell the body mind? Body means awaken, the awakening mind, and how do they conquer the deluded thoughts? And in chapter 3, Buddha goes those 2 questions from Subukti. And the first question, how do they dwell their minds? If anyone remembers, they can come forward and unmute themselves. All right. I think it's been a while. Even I forgot a bit. Cool. The answer was spreading Tao, and Dharma. It's just a summary. I don't want to go deep. I can't go because there's more chapters to cover. And the second question of how do they conquer the thoughts was basically selflessness and no expectations in spreading the Tao or Dharma. And in chapter 4, we talked about the greatest gift. The greatest gift is giving without attachments to self and without discrimination. This is basically letting go of any like materialistic attachments while you're doing Dharma, and with no discriminations, most importantly. And chapter 5, we talked about realizing the Buddha's nature. At the secular phenomena or delusions, all the secular phenomena are delusion. By the time you sense all the secular phenomena are not phenomena, instantaneously your Buddha nature will emerge. And that ends of that's the end of part 1 that we went through in last 2 sessions. And now we'll be entering part 2. So the first 5 chapters as part 1, they're titled as the dialects of Diamond Sutra. It's the setting, and it's the basic understanding and questions. And chapter 2 is named as the language of non-attachment. So chapter 2 part 2 has 3 chapters, and all of them are talking about non-attachment. And yeah, well, I'll dive into chapter so we can go deep into that. So chapter 6, a rose is not a rose. The first, I'll read the whatever I have in the slide is the exact passage that is the conversation that went through. It's a translation from the Sanskrit Diamond Sutra. I referred 2 books. One of them is this guy, the Diamond Sutra. And then the second one, second book was a book from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a book that I found online. They had some translations too. So whenever I have troubles, I go back and forth. So let's go with the passage. It says, "The Venerable Subhuti said to Buddha, 'In times to come, will there be people who, when they hear these teachings, have real faith and confidence in them?' The Buddha replied, 'Do not speak that way, Subhuti. 500 years after the Tathagata has passed away, there will still be people who enjoy the happiness that comes from observing the precepts. When such people hear these words, they will have faith and confidence that here is the truth. We should know that such people have sown seeds not only during their lifetime of one Buddha or even two, three, four, or five Buddhas, but have in truth planted wholesome seeds during the lifetime of tens of thousands of Buddha.'" So, if you remember in chapter 4, Buddha was talking about uh, giving without dwelling or secular phenomena, and in chapters 5, Buddha said that Buddha has got no physical form, right? Which will be suspected by people hereafter that there is neither Buddha nor Dharma. So Subhukti was afraid that it would be difficult for people in the future to generate confidence in what Buddha said. So that's why he's asking this question, that in the future, are people are gonna be like believing all this stuff that you say because it's so confusing. In one chapter you say there's no physical like attachments, and there's no like Buddha, it's a physical form of Buddha, you don't exist, and then you say this. So uh, like Subhakti is worried about people in the future trying to understand Dharma Sutra or any of his teachings, and that's why he brought this up. And in Buddhism, it is often said that our minds is like a field, and every time we do something wholesome or joyful, we sow a Buddha seed in that field. So in this passage, the Buddha said that people who understand these teachings have planted wholesome seeds during the lifetime of tens and thousands of Buddhas. So it's basically like uh, I remember Emily saying this in previous one of the classes where it's like there's a bank in the heaven or something. So whenever you do something good, you keep adding points to those to the account, and it's something like that. So whenever you do like dharma with no attachments and with no discrimination, you keep sowing wholesome like good dharmic, good karmic seeds, and the more seeds you sow, the more wisdom, the more towards wisdom you reach, right? So please stop me or ask uh, if you guys have any questions or doubts, just right then and there, because it's a bit. Sometimes it might be very confusing, and if I'm not clear, because if I'm not clear, then yeah, please stop me and go ahead and ask me. Thank you, guys. And then the passage goes, anyone who for only a second gives rise to a pure and a clear confidence upon hearing these words of Tathagata. And Tathagata here means Buddha. So Buddha calls himself Tathagata. So the Tathagata sees and knows that person, and he or she will attain immeasurable happiness because of this understanding. Why? Because that kind of person is not caught up in the idea of a self, a person, a living being, or a lifespan. They are not caught up in the idea of a dharma or the idea of non-dharma. They are not caught up in the notion that this is a sign and this is not a sign. Why? If you are caught up in the idea of a, you're also caught up in the idea of a self, a person, a living being, and a lifespan. If you are caught up in the idea that there is no dharma, you're still caught up in the idea of a self, a person, a living being, and a lifespan. And there we go. It just gets more like interesting, and the words they use is super like, like I don't know, you can easily mislead. So let's understand this. So when there's talk about signs, like when there's notion of a sign and there's not a sign, what they mean here is concepts, right? So any concept, sign here means concepts. When we have a concept about something, the image appears with within that concept. For example, when we have a concept of a table, we see an image of that table. But we must remember that our concept is the thing itself. It is just our perception, which might be, in fact, a very different form of a table. For example, for a termite, a table may perceive the termite may perceive a table as a feast. For a physicist, they may perceive it as a mass of rapidly moving particles. In Buddhist practice, because they have been practicing looking deeply, they might have fewer erroneous views, and their perceptions might be closer to being complete and true, but they still are perceptions. So every concept, like from anyone's point of view, it is a concept. So we have to let go of that concept of that sign. Uh, it is like it is an ultimate level of like no attachment, right? Like anything you think of, just don't get attached to any preconceived ideas or any concepts. It comes with intense practice and a lot of awareness. One personal realization that I can tell is it's hard to understand at first, but I still can't comprehend. Like I still can't get to that level of not being attached to a concept. But one thing that reminded me, also after watching a video recently, is that like the way I see meditation in like 15 years ago and now, if anyone had asked me like 15 years ago if I meditate, I would be like proudly like, yeah, I meditate like 15 to 20 minutes. I can meditate 15 to 20 minutes. But then if you ask me today, I think after learning a lot about meditation or even experiencing like practicing it and being awareness of what meditation can is, what meditation intend to do, uh, I would say I can probably like meditate for a breath or two breaths maximum. That's like already crazy. Uh, in a session continuously, right? Continuously for two breaths or three, and then I get distracted again. It's not saying that my ability to meditate is degraded. This is a realization that to notice how much I am distracted every time. This is something a very few people notice about themselves until they try to meditate. Uh, I've heard this one on Sam Harris's talk recently. Vikram has shared it with me before. So you're tending to live lost in thoughts. You're thinking every moment of the day without noticing that you're thinking, and that's the basic problem. It's hard to pay attention because you're thinking every single moment of the day and you're not aware of it. That's the crazy part. I was not even aware that I am thinking that I'm thinking while I was meditating until recently when I'm paying more attention and I'm more aware of what I was doing is when I realized that like two breaths maximum and then I'm already thinking of something or something. The fact that I'm thinking that I'm thinking of this is already a thinking. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's hard to it's hard to comprehend. Do you guys have anything that comes up in your mind, or you just want to share something before? Or do I make sense? Am I confusing you guys?
I think to let go of your perception of what something is also would create harmony in the society.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of reminded me about a video that you showed me last time. It
Mm-hmm.
was about this scientist who has a good artist friend, and they always say that scientists don't
appreciate
appreciate how beautiful a flower is. And the scientists, on the other hand, kind of argued that they actually see more of a rose or a flower than an artist. So these two people, they also hold a different idea of what a flower is. Maybe the scientist thinks of what it consists of and how that flower will interact with the environment, the surrounding, and how it grows and all that. And the artist will be like the color of the rose and the light that shines through, blah blah, other things. So you can see this is just a difference in opinion of describing the exact same thing, but that if you bring it to a higher scale, then you can see that this could create a war. But they're actually just talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Well, the chapter's title, "A Rose Is Not a Rose." There's a reason that I chose this title because as I was talking about the table, the rose concept, table concept, it's all like they're all concepts and they're all like perception from one's experience, right? They all exist in one, and if we can see that, then that wisdom level is different, and you'll start seeing things differently for sure.
I have a metaphor for this.
Yeah.
So without true awakening, everyday people, myself included, we are basically looking at this universe, looking at the rose through the lens of camera. So some people say, "Oh, my camera is not as good as yours. Your camera is more clear than mine." Some people say, "Oh no, my zoom is not wide enough. I'm not capturing the whole picture, so I need a better zoom lens."
Yeah.
And then some people are like, "Oh, my captures video," and then the next person, "Oh, my captures 3D video." And it's, "Oh, my captures sound." And then maybe 30 years into the future, my captures the scent.
Yeah.
Right. But the point is, no matter what you do, if you're trying to cultivate in that direction, on that plane, there's always this concept of behind the camera and in front of the camera, which is never the truth.
Yeah.
You won't actually get it until you drop the camera.
Yeah.
And you're just, it's not about you versus the rose. It's not about you observing the rose. A rose is, you're one with that object that you're sharing this universe with. That's when you actually get it, like touch it, feel it, smell it, recognize its existence, and coexisting with it.
Yeah.
Like understanding the life in it. That's part of you. That's only then can you get it. So in terms of academically, trying to understand concepts and constructs, that will never work because you're just using a better camera, better equipment. You're looking at it more closely or whatever. It's not about that.
Yeah, I have a video or a talk from Alan Watts on this in upcoming slides. It's what you said right now.
Alan who? Just kidding. No, I didn't cheat.
No. I'm just saying it's this like all three chapters in this part is about letting go of attachments, and it's coming back to the same point. There's different focus on three chapters, but overall it's the same idea. The core is what you said. It's a one single existence, and you got to exist with it without any attachment or without any concepts or perceptions, basically. Oh, there you go. Right, sharing is done then. So in this, so this chapter still continues, and So this it says, this is why we should not get caught up in dharmas or in the idea that dharma does not exist. Because of this wonderful truth that Tathagata often says, bhikshus are male monks, the monks that are listening to him in the sharing. Tathagata often says, bhikshus, you should know that all the teachings I give you are just like a raft, which should be deserted as soon as we arrive at the other shore. Similar to this analogy, dharma should be deserted, much less non-dharma. So when the Buddha is offering the teachings, it is possible that his listeners will cling to these teachings even after they are no longer appropriate or necessary, right? Listening to the teachings of Buddha is like catching a dangerous snake. If you don't know how to do it, you may take a hold of the tail first, and the snake might just turn around and bite you. The same is true with the teachings of Buddha. You can get hurt if you're unskillful. You must be careful not to get caught by the teachings. The ideas of emptiness, impermanence, and selflessness are extremely helpful, but if you use them without understanding them deeply and clearly, you can suffer and cause harm to others. If one takes letting go literally, then they might be in trouble. Like we need to be in a state of awareness to understand this and relate this to our everyday life, and not get into trouble or something. Like when I read this passage of getting teaching and letting go, it just reminded me of a short story. Some people may know this. Let me quickly share that.
Once upon a time, two Buddhist monks were on a journey. One of them was a senior monk, and the other was a junior monk. And during their journey, they approached a raging river. And on the riverbank stood a young lady. She was clearly concerned about how she would get to the other side of the river without drowning. The junior monk walked straight past her without giving it a thought, and he crossed the river. The senior monk, however, picked up the woman and carried her across the river. He placed her down, they parted ways, and on they went with their journey. As the journey went on, the senior monk could see some concern on the junior monk's mind. He asked what was wrong. And the junior monk replied, "How could you carry her like that? You know we can't touch women. It's against our way of life." And the senior monk answered, "I left the woman at the river's edge a long way back. Why are you still carrying her?" The senior monk had broken rules, but for good reason. Once the purpose was fulfilled, he put her down and continued on. He never gave it a further thought. The junior monk, however, he didn't touch the woman, but he had brought up the actions of the senior monk when it was an action of the past. Therefore, the junior monk was carrying the burden of what the senior monk had done as an emotional baggage.
Right? You guys know the story, right? Cool. Yeah, so that's a fun story, a fun way of saying, like, letting go of your thoughts. Stop being so monkey. Okay, that's a good one, Jake. So yeah, the summary of chapter 6 is we should let go of any unnecessary attachments, and our enlightenment relies on dharma and giving it up after we are enlightened. So don't carry the dharma with you, and don't get attached to the dharma itself. That's the precise summary of chapter 6. If anyone has any sharing or questions about this, guys can go ahead. If not, we can move on to the next chapter.
Anyone, anything to share?
A rose is not a rose.
So for me, I think that's the reason why, for cultivation, that's the reason why we have a group of people together. And we still need the Dharma because, first of all, we don't know what we do wrong in our daily life. So we still need to study and then, learn all the Dharma and then find out the one that we needed to help us to reach the enlightenment. So, yeah, by letting it go, but you need to first learn it.
Oh yeah.
So for the cultivation, right? So that's the reason why we have temple, we created a place, and then we have people gathering together, we have different classes, and doesn't matter how long that you are in the temple, we're still continuously learning from each other. And then everybody has different backgrounds, so the different dharma suits for everybody. And then so I don't know, for me it's like, jump into conclusion too quickly. That's I need to change that, because sometimes people will react from your past experience, and people like often will say the same sentence like, oh my god, I know it's you again. Oh, this is. And then so sometimes when we talk to people, we have patience at the beginning when we first know them, but then slowly more and more and more, sometimes you lose patience. I'm talking about myself, like, teaching kids, and sometimes you jump into conclusion that, oh, this is what they're going to do. Oh, this is what they're going to say. But sometimes it's not. So we need to get rid of those kind of the concept or the opinions.
Yeah.
And every time you talk to a person or interact with a person or a person, it's always a new experience. You need to have that kind of thoughts, I think. Then you won't jump into conclusion too quickly.
Yeah.
Or and then also you will have a patience to listen to the person to finish the talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually perfect. I don't know, Emily. I don't know if you saw my presentation already. Like this leads perfectly to my next chapter. Thank you. Speaking of people and their characters, and we trying to like justify or give a concept. Chapter 7 is entering the ocean of reality. So the passage goes like this, right? So what do you think, Shubhakti, as the Tathagata arrived at the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind? Does the Tathagata give any teachings? And the Venerable Subhakti replied, as far as I have understood the Lord Buddha's teaching, there is no independently existing object of mind called the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind, nor is there any independently existing teaching that the Tathagata gives. Why? The teachings that our Tathagata has realized and spoken of cannot be conceived of as separate, independent existence, and therefore cannot be described. The Tathagata's teaching is not self-existent, nor is it non-self-existent. Why? Because the noble teachers are only distinguished from others in terms of the unconditioned. So there is so much going on in this passage. Let's try to quickly. Let me take my notes. So as I said, it's a fun passage. We say there is no physical like being of Buddha, and where are all these scriptures coming from? Like, who has attained all the Dharma? All these questions arrive. I said all these questions will arrive for a common mortal beings. We got to see past the secular phenomena to understand the ideas of Tao and its existence. And Tao is an existence in its whole entirety, as Jake mentioned before. It's like it's a mere existence. You got to exist with it, right? So here, Buddha is basically asking like a student about the highest, most fulfilled awakened mind. And he said the student is so smart to reply that they're not a separate thing. You can't see the teachings and Buddha as separate. You can't break them into like two different parts. And the notion that things can exist independently of one another comes from the perception that they all have a beginning and an end. But it is impossible to find the beginning or end of anything. When we look at our loved ones, a family member, or close to us, or even like kids, like as Emily was saying, let me give an analogy. For example, let's say a person A, right? You might think that you understand A completely, but that is difficult because that person A is a river of reality. In every moment, dharmas that are not A's enters and leaves A. You cannot take hold of A by observing A's form, feelings, perception, and mental formation or consciousness. You see that A is here sitting next to you, and A is elsewhere at the same time. The person A is in the present, the past, and the future. Your friend, the Buddha, Shubhukti, the rose, the child, everyone, they all cannot be grasped because they have no beginning and no end. Their presence is deeply connected to all dharmas and all object of mind in the universe. So that analogy is basically the analogy I read it in the book of the Thich Nhat Hanh, the way he was saying how you will see a friend or a close one, for example, like the kid that you said, you already come to a conclusion, you think this is what it is, right? But then it's more than that. They are an ocean of reality. They're flowing with realities. You see them physically sitting next to you. You see them thinking, and that's from your camera, your vision of your perception, right? But then they, at the same time, inside themselves, there's a lot of dharmas going in and out, dharmic and non-dharmic stuffs, and they're in the present, they're past, they're in the future, they're everywhere. It's so like hard to even comprehend or understand that existence of the being right next to you. To put it in a simpler way, as Emily helped me before, it's hard to come to a conclusion, and we should be having the awareness of letting go of that concept of anyone from the past experience or how they behave, and see it all as a one existing entity, and that will actually give us more peaceful mind, and also like attaining the teachings of letting go and not being attached to others' feelings or emotions, and coming to a conclusion which ends up with a lot of problems. So when the last sentence, when it talks about because the noble teachers are only distinguished from others in terms of the unconditioned, is like what they mean is the noble teachers are liberated. They transcend all concepts. They are distinguished from others because they are in touch with and realize the unconditioned dharma. They are no longer imprisoned by forms and concepts. And that's why they call them noble teachers, because they are not attached to forms and concepts. While I was reading this passage, there was an Alan Watts talk that I could relate to, which we can all listen to. Let's hear that.
In this universe, there is one great energy, and we have no name for it. People have tried various names for it, like God, like Brahman, like Tao. But in the West, the word God has got so many funny associations attached to it that most of us are bored with it. When people say God the Father Almighty, most people feel funny inside. But according to Buddhist philosophy, all this universe is one tathata. That means 10,000 functions or 10,000 things, one suchness. And we're all one suchness. And that means that suchness comes and goes like everything else, because this whole world is an on and off system. As the Chinese say, it's the yang and the yin. And therefore it consists of now you see it, now you don't, here you are, here you aren't, here you aren't. Because that's the very nature of energy, to be like waves, and waves have crests and troughs. Only we, being under a certain kind of sleepiness or illusion, imagine that the trough is going to overcome the wave or the crest. The yin, the dark principle, is going to overcome the yang, or the light principle, and that off is finally going to triumph over on. And we, shall I say, bug ourselves by indulging in that illusion. Gee, supposing darkness did win out, wouldn't that be terrible? And so we're constantly trembling and thinking that it may, because after all, isn't it odd that anything exists? It's most peculiar. It requires effort, it requires energy, and it would be so much easier for there to have been nothing at all. Therefore we think, well, since the is side of things is so much effort, you always give up after a while and you sink back into death. But death is just the other face of energy, and it's the rest, the not being anything around, that produces something around, just in the same way that you can't have solid without space, or space without solid. When you wake up to this and realize that the more it changes, the more it's the same thing, as the French say, that you are really a playing of this one energy, and there is nothing else but that it is you, but that for you to be always you would be an insufferable bore. And therefore it is arranged that you stop being you after a while and then come back as someone else altogether. And so when you find that out, you become full of energy and delight. And you suddenly see through the whole sham of things. You realize you're that. We won't put a name on it. You're that. And you can't be anything else. So you are relieved of fundamental terror. That doesn't mean that you're always going to be a great hero, that you won't jump when you hear it bang, that you won't worry occasionally, that you won't lose your temper. It means, though, that fundamentally, deep, deep down within you, you will be able to be human in the pains, difficulties, and struggles that naturally go with human existence. But to have no hang-up, that is to say, to be able to drift like a cloud and flow like water, seeing that all life is a magnificent illusion, a playing of energy, and there is absolutely nothing fundamentally to be afraid of. Fundamentally. You will be afraid on the surface. You will be afraid of putting your hand in the fire. You will be afraid of getting sick. But you will not be afraid of fear. Fear will pass over your mind like a black cloud will be reflected.
Yeah. And so that's summarizing chapter 7. The Dharma is unattainable and invisible and has no form. And this section of Sutra shows that all dharmas are without form and transcends conceptual knowledge. When we realize that suchness of all dharmas, we are freed from our conceptual prison. In daily life, we usually use our conceptual knowledge to grasp reality, but this is impossible. And meditation aims at breaking through all the concepts of limitations and barriers so that we can move freely in the boundless ocean of reality. That's how I would like to summarize chapter 7 of entering the ocean of reality, of Dharma being no form and that is an invisible thing. Anything people would like to share before we move on to chapter 8? Emily, lead me to the next chapter, please.
I'm still afraid of water. Not water, fire though.
Yeah. I am afraid of water, and I think everyone is afraid of the fire. Not the concept, but it's that you won't be afraid of the fear itself. You know that, like, if you understand that fire, water, and everything is part of this big one energy, I tell that to myself whenever I'm afraid of water, because I'm still afraid of the deep water. But then it's hard. It's hard. I couldn't do it. I'll be like, okay, next time I go to the swimming pool, I go to the deeper side and I jump in, and I want to do the dive as well. And then I'll be like, what's gonna happen? There are people all around you. They're gonna save you. It's just water. There's no fish or anything. There's no sharks to kill you. But there's still that fear of that fear. I'm afraid of that fear, right? So if I let go of that afraid on the fear that I have of water, I will be able to jump in. It doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt me. Doesn't mean that I'm going to like go all the way down and hit the floor or something. It's not that I'm not going to die inside, but I'm letting go of the fear that I'm going to do something like that. You know, it's part of this one energy, and you all coexist with each other. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. And hopefully one day I'll be able to let go of that, and then I can jump in the water.
That's the reason why. That's how I actually teach the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when they do something and then they fail, and then they will say, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so I often say to the kids that you need to believe yourself you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I know the process of doing it or letting go the fear is hard.
Yeah.
However, if you're not even trying and then telling yourself, I can't,
mm-hmm.
then you will always can't. But if you tell yourself, I can, and I will, and then I will try, then you will reach the point of, belief that I don't know, like the thought is very powerful things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once they grow up, and then they have a little bit more understanding of Tao and spirituality, you can tell them that let go of all those thoughts, and you won't be scared of anything.
Mm-hmm. And then also the fear that you got from the ocean, it's all from it's all from like the news or the videos that happens around us, and then we implanted that. I'm not suggesting people doing crazy things, but I'm just saying sometimes the fear is all the concept that we not even learn just by watching other things. Right? So it
has no form. We're just creating a concept. We're just creating this form inside our mind, and we are holding on to it so tight, and I'm so afraid and all that. But honestly, it doesn't make sense. If I sit on my chair in a comfortable bedroom scenario and think of all this, it makes sense. And when you push me in the water, all that goes away. Okay. Yeah.
I think what this chapter at the beginning, I think it kind of reminded me of the fact that we all consist of our soul and our mind and the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And then you name a list of people and then say that they're not you can't think of each of them as them, and then you can't like hold on to a pre-existing concept of what they are, and knowing that our soul comes from the universe or the truth and should share the same characteristics of the truth. It is impossible for us to say that the truth is countable, so that your soul is not a single soul.
Yeah.
Because then you are part of this great event.
Yeah.
So then the people that die, they aren't really dead. It's only their physical body that just and then they kind of transformed into a different form of existence. So then it does make sense to kind of have us think of all these individual people and items as not countable, right? Because we all come from that truth, and we can't can't just individualize everything.
We cannot separate things from each other. They cannot be. That's why they say, right, when he talks about the teachings of Buddha, the student was like, I can't separate the teachings from Buddha. They're all same. It's like, if you understand this all comes from one, like the Tao, the universe, one energy, it's hard for you to separate like myself from the plant or myself from any other human beings. Like we all consider one, and then you'll be more like that will lead you to selflessness, and that will lead you to caring for others because we're all one, and that will reduce the anger or the frustration you get from others, and it'll give you a bigger picture of trying to see past just the layer of ridiculous things that they're doing and understand and try to help each other out, since we're all one big picture, rather than saying, hey, you're from that type of group of people and I'm from this type and you're doing that, and just try not to separate each other or any forms.
Yeah, which is very, very difficult to do.
Yes,
because I think we are placed, or somehow we're placed into this secular world, and the things that we see and experience are very different from the truth, and that is why like Buddha's teaching, and then they like our holy teacher will say that we have to rely on the fake to cultivate out the truth. It's kind of like we've been thrown into a video game, and then we're those characters, and we think that we are actually we do actually exist, and inside that video game is the reality, and is how things should be functioning. And then until we are out of that game, it's hard to kind of gain that level of true understanding of that we are really just in a game. Like, there's a lot of different sayings, right? Like, oh, life is like a dream, right? And you are just dreaming. Or, oh, life is a great show, and you are just an actor.
Playing it, yeah.
Which I think it's all things that help us kind of take a step back and really understand what this life really means, and what environment, and with this environment, how we can kind of find ourselves back again. But I mean, when it comes to day to day, it is pretty difficult to kind of have that peace of mind.
This entire part too is, they easily say no attachment, let go of the physical thing. Like everything is like easily said, but it's the most hardest practice when it comes to real life and everyday life.
That's why Emily brought up a really good thing, saying that that's why we need a group where we keep
reminding each other,
with each other's support. We can know that, oh, I guess I was dwelling on something that's I'm seeing it from a false angle, and kind of correct myself and then move on.
Definitely.
So Sandy is actually doing a trailer for the new movie that's coming.
No.
Oh, the guy.
The guy, the good
Yeah.
guy or something.
Good guy.
Yeah, something like that.
I was exactly thinking about that when she talked about the game. No, it's Deadpool guy. What's his name? Oh my god, I can't even come up with his name. The actor, Deadpool actor, Ryan Reynolds' next movie. Yeah.
Yes, him.
Yeah.
The new movie that is coming. Yeah, the guy is in the movie, and then he start fighting back, and then the people that around him says that, hey, you don't do this kind of things.
And he didn't even know that he's in a game until someone will give him the
outside of the game, tell him.
Yeah. And then he's coming to an awareness that he's in a game, and then he's like, but this is not what you do, and he's the only good guy in the game, and everyone else is being like, he's doing something different, and everyone tries to follow him, and they was trying to be good in the game, while the game is not designed to be good. It's about killing and like.
It's like a Grand Theft Auto or something like that, like beating people or killing and stuff like that.
Isn't that the same concept as the
Ready
cartoon that the kids were watching?
Which cartoon?
It's like a video game, and then there's like a really big guy who's supposed to knock down.
Wreck-It Ralph?
Yeah. He was supposed to knock down the hotel, right?
Yeah.
And he's so tired of being a bad guy. But it was designed for his character to be a bad guy.
It's kind of similar, but this one is
more adult-ish.
More relating, because there is a person who will come and break his reality and say, you're living in a game. And then he's like, what? And then you start doing things. It's like Buddha coming to you and giving you the awareness. Are you reaching the enlightenment? It's like, and then what? And then you're like changing the entire perception of what you should be doing, kind of thing.
To be honest, that would be kind of cool to experience.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to be
because
smash in the face, and then all of a sudden, like,
you get
all the realization.
Well, the thing is, people always say this is who I am, right? So it's, you believe that your character is already being designed as the way that you act or the way that you do things, and so it's pretty much the same concept. Like the Buddha gives you the teachings, like, what? Okay, so I need to change the game. I need to change the world. That's how the saints and sages they're born, and then they are saints and sages. Because they believe that they can do it, and then they can change the world little by little, build it up.
So it's already 12 p.m. I have one more chapter to go, and that chapter is pretty fast to finish. If you guys don't mind, I can take another 15 minutes maximum, and I can finish by 12. Or I can do it next time. Up to you guys. What do you guys think? You guys want to continue today or next time?
Well, I'm good to continue here.
Someone said next time. Who was that? Did anyone say next time?
I heard it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you said you can do it. Go ahead.
We'll keep on going here.
Okay, let's quickly go ahead then. All right, let me finish it off. Part 2 with the last chapter, chapter 8. Chapter 8 is titled as Non-Attachment, and it goes like this. What do you think, Shubhakti, if someone were to fill the 3,000 kilocosms with the 7 precious treasures as an act of generosity, would that person bring much happiness by this virtuous act? The Venerable Subhakti replied, yes, World 101. It is because the very natures of virtue and happiness are not virtue and happiness that the Tathagata is able to speak about virtue and happiness. This is when Subhakti answered, is playing with his words. He's going around with it. It's basically like no, is what he's trying to say. The thing is, so when Buddha is asking 3,000 kilosmos is a Greek word. Kilo means thousands and cosmos means universe. So he's asking if Buddha's asking if someone were to fill with like a lot of treasures and precious things of like 3,000 universe as an act of generosity, would that person bring much happiness by this virtuous act? And basically what Shubhakti is saying is that offering material supports to others can detach them from the cannot detach them from the cycle of death, birth, and rebirth. The material support can just help temporarily, but that's not a true virtue or happiness. As Tathagata what Tathagata is speaking about, that type of virtuous happiness is not a materialistic generosity. It is what Buddha said. On the other hand, if there is someone who accepts these teachings and puts them into practice, even if only a gatha of 4 lines, and explains them to someone else, the happiness brought about by this virtuous act far exceeds the happiness brought about by giving the 7 precious treasures. Why? Because, Shubhakti, all Buddhas are in the Dharma of the highest and most fulfilled awakened mind of all Buddhas arise from these teachings. So basically, well, this reminds me of the quote, one famous quote, like, give a man a fish and you feed him a day, and teach a man how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime, kind of thing, right? So you can give materialistic helps that can help, but that's temporary, and that's like necessary, immediate help needed. Yeah, go ahead, do materialistic helps. That's temporary. But in the long term, if you really want to help people, if you really want to help your loved ones, it's good to share this thought of wisdom and enlighten them with the wisdom of the teachings of Buddha. And as he said, that's where all the Buddhas and Dharmas are emerging from these awakened teachings. That's basically the gist of chapter 8. Chapter 8 it's quite simple to understand. It's like to summarize chapter 8, it's non-attachment to materialistic charity, and spreading wisdom is the real charity, or the charity for long term, which would help any beings to help spread wisdom. When I read this, I basically thought of our own bi-weekly sharing, because isn't that what we're doing here? Like we have started, like I started reading Dhamma Sutra because of this sharing. If not, I don't know, I wouldn't probably started reading it anytime soon. And after reading it, I've been like reviewing myself and like attaining a lot of like thoughts and awareness of what I'm doing for myself. And thanks to you all for this opportunity, and thanks to everyone in the temple for giving me this opportunity to share the wisdom and plant the wholesome seed in my lifetime. I hope we can all share this with others, the wisdom and the knowledge, and not knowledge, the awareness that we gained through the sharings and through others. And this is the end of part 2. And we shall see part 3 in our next sharing. But I would like to end this sharing with another 5-minute video, which summarizes overall the concept of letting go from 3 wisdom minds. And then I'll end the session. And let's quickly hear that.
To be detached from the world, in the sense that Buddhists and Taoists and Hindus will often talk about detachment, does not mean to be non-participative. You can have a sexual life very rich and very full, and yet all the time be detached. By that I don't mean that you just go through it mechanically and have your thoughts elsewhere. I mean a complete participation, but still detached. And the difference of the 2 attitudes is this. On the one hand, there is a way of being so anxious about physical pleasure So afraid that you won't make it, that you grab it too hard. That you just have to have that thing. And if you do that, you destroy it completely. And therefore, after every attempt to get it, you feel disappointed. You feel empty, you feel something was lost. And therefore you want it again. You have to keep repeating, because you never really got there. And it's this that is the hang-up. This is what is meant by attachment to this world in an evil sense. But on the other hand, pleasure in its fullness cannot be experienced when one is grasping it. I knew a little girl to whom someone gave a bunny rabbit. She was so delighted with the bunny rabbit and so afraid of losing it that taking it home in the car, she squeezed it to death with love. And lots of parents do that to their children. And lots of spouses do it to each other. They hold on too hard and so take the life out of this transient, beautifully fragile thing that life is. To have it, to have life, and to have its pleasure, you must at the same time let go of it. And then you can feel perfectly free to have that pleasure in the most gutsy, rollicking, earthy, lip-licking way. One's whole being taken over by a kind of undulative, convulsive ripple, which is like the very pulse of life itself. This can happen only if you let go.
What do you mean happiness? What exactly do you mean by happiness? If you translate a particular sensation as happiness, you call it happiness, a particular sensation that is there. You separate yourself and use that knowledge about the happiness that is put in there and translate that and tell yourself that you are happy. You understand? All sensations are very short-lived. They can't last forever. So the moment you separate yourself from a particular sensation and tell yourself that you are happy, the demand to keep that going longer than its duration of life is inevitable. So what all you are doing to stretch that and keep that going on and on has turned that into the opposite unhappiness. You are stuck with unhappiness. Same is the case with the pleasure. You want to be in that state of pleasure all the time. It is just not possible. So you are turning pleasure into pain. You know, we are not ready to accept it. And all those religious jokers tell us, we have some ways, we teach you the techniques of meditation, yoga, this, that, and the other, and you will be in permanent bliss. The demand for permanence in every area of our existence is the cause of human misery. There is no such thing as permanence at all.
Well, I keep saying, de-emphasize anxiety, reassure people. You meet people who say, you know, I'm really scared. I'm scared about my job. I'm scared about my I'm scared. And says, don't worry. You don't know enough to worry. That's God's truth. Who do you think you are that you should worry, for crying out loud? I mean, it's a total waste of time. It presupposes such a knowledge of the situation that it is, in fact, a form of hubris. You know, no, what you do is just pay your bills and, you know, pack heat if you need to, and don't worry. That's all. Yes. Worry is praying to the devil. That's great. Worry is betting against yourself. You know, Wi Po Yang, a great Chinese Taoist who wrote many, many commentaries on the I Ching. He was asked at the end of his life, what was his conclusion of a life of studying the I Ching? And he said, worry is preposterous.
And with that video, I'd like to come to an end. And thank you all for today's sharing. Yeah, so the Diamond Sutra is it's not difficult to understand. It's although it sounds strange until you get used to the way they talk. Like the first time when I read the passages, it was quite confusing, and I was like asking for help. Like, so how am I gonna explain this, and what's this? And the more you read it again and again, and you understand the way they use their words, and it's kind of repetitive, and every sentence has its in-depth meaning. And moreover, as I said before, it's because of the sharing where I was able to start reading this, and I'm spending more time to understand this, and it's been helping me, and hopefully I did a good job sharing what I taught and what the book is trying to explain. And hopefully you guys can share the wisdom with your loved ones too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's 12:14. Ha! 1 minute early than I said.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop.
Thank
you.
Thanks. I'm gonna stop the recording first, and then we can